is Erica Norton, and I'm the founder of Perfect Legal Video. I'm very excited to have with us today Attorney Nicole Reeves Lavallee. She owns a family and real estate law firm in the Worcester, Massachusetts area, and she is fantastic at what she does. She has a great team as well, and we are very fortunate to have her with us every week, talking about all of these different, very important topics relating to these areas of the law. So today we're going to be talking about how to prepare for one of the most expensive and I think emotionally heated parts of family law, and that is how to prepare for child custody court. So let's take it up there. Hi there, Nicole. How are you today?
Hi, thanks for having me.
You are welcome. So, we've talked about this before. Child custody is one of the most, I guess, like emotionally charged areas of the law that you deal with. And it's also one of the most expensive things that people will pay for because it takes forever in most cases to work out the custody, and there's a lot involved, and there's experts and everything else. So I guess, would you agree with that?
Well, I think it is it could be one of the most expensive, and it's really because it's your most valuable asset, and it's not really an asset, right? So it's your most prized thing that you love in life. So of course you want to give it your all, and either that or freedom, right? It's those two types of areas of law where you really want to focus on. I need to do what's best, and that's really what it involves. And so yeah, that obviously can get very costly when the other party doesn't agree with your analysis.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's probably also one of the most shocking adjustments that you have to make when you're going through a divorce, because most people are just used to having access to their children all the time. And then nobody really questions whether someone is a good parent or not, as long as somebody is doing the job that needs to be done. So one parent may never be there. You just take it for granted that you get to see your children all the time, and all of a sudden, you're being judged, your spouse is being judged. You're trying to figure out what's best for the person. You're trying to make sure that the living arrangements are going to be somewhat similar in both places to what they're used to having. There's schools that are involved. There's a lot. What would you say some of the top issues are when courts are deciding about where custody goes?
Well, I think you hit on most of them. That's exactly it. You really got to focus on, again, what does that look like? Like, are they used to one house versus another? Did somebody move out of the marital home and now that kid's going to have to share a room with somebody else that I don't want to, and I haven't had to do it in my own house? Or, well, wait a minute, there's no yard for me to play in. Just something very simple like that, the court's going to look at. Then we look at, okay, well, how are they going to be able to get to school? When you decide to move to a different location, is it going to be too hard? Now we have to have a 45-minute drive. So now Sally's got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning so that she can go to school, which means she really has to be in bed by 7 o'clock. And we really need to make this happen. But I don't get out of work till 5. So I can't have, only an hour and a half with her. And so that whole dynamic starts shifting when we just think about what happens when you move out of a house. And there's so much more. We have the schooling, we have the life location, we have their friends and family that are within distance, and now all of a sudden they're moving. We have the fact that I did get to see mommy and daddy every day, and now I don't get to do that. So a lot of things are changing, and the court's going to look at all of that. And it's not just they're going to be hyper focused on one thing. They're not. They're going to be looking at all the circumstances, what's changing, how it's changing, and more importantly, how this child is adapting. Because sometimes kids are like, yeah, whatever, it's my parents, and I go over to my friend's house and they do the same thing. What's the difference? And, they grew up with it, now seeing it on TV because now that's what we advertise in TV. And, it's kind of the norm where, in my generation, everyone was always intact. There was no separate families. So now we're showing that. So again, you have the dynamic of, can that child make that switch because of the environments that they see? Or are they going to suffer as a result of it? And it really is on a case by case basis.
I mean, really, and sometimes you don't see the results of that change in the children until later. Like once things are going and then things change and the spouses, the ex-spouses are getting new partners, and then that really throws a wrench in things because that's another whole personality uh that has to be brought in, and it's really it starts to look a lot different than it used to when they were married and living. And maybe it's better. Sometimes it's better. I was going to ask you, I mean, in the olden days when divorce, the scarlet letter, it like was rarely out there. Like you said, in our time, hardly anyone was divorced. I mean, my parents got divorced when I was 7. And so I felt different. I felt like people were looking at me like, oh, geez, she's a single mom and working all the time. And oh, they're left alone and all that stuff. That was really looked down upon. And, my mother was oftentimes treated badly and thought badly of because she couldn't be there all the time and make all the money, and like it was difficult. But back then the women always got the children, I think. For the most part, the women got the children. And I don't know, I was going to ask you, do you see it being a lot different? Because I certainly don't think that um I'm sure that there's plenty of I know a few parents where the male is the primary caregiver. um I just wondered how much of a norm that is nowadays, if it's changed.
Absolutely, it's changed a lot. I mean, the reality is it used to be exactly what you said. Because, oh, by the way, a lot of times the women weren't working. That was their job, to stay home and take care of the children. Why would you go out and get an education? Why would you do this? We've obviously grown since then. So there are more women in the work field. Hence, more women are going out, and sometimes the dads are the primary caregivers, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But, I would say generally speaking, the court starts with the premise of it's going to be 50-50 joint custody. Tell me why it isn't. And so the reality is there's lots more fathers out there that are getting custody because they do want to fight for it. And, sometimes jobs do get in the way. But again, most times nowadays, there are two parents and they're both working. And the question is whether or not, they have different schedules. Sometimes it's like mom works overnight and dad works first shift. So there was never any problems because they were able to work that out. It becomes a little bit of a problem when you're separated. But again, the court's going to follow that dynamic along. And, obviously added families do add into the mix when you have half siblings and, you know, step children and all that stuff. It really comes into play of what does that family dynamic look like. And it's always very interesting when I'm trying to get to know a child, if I'm doing an ARC case and I'm saying, okay, so who are your siblings and who's their parents? Because I really don't want to ask it any other way. But then I have to get that. And are there other family members? Okay. And then, you kind of do the dynamic. And so you're really trying to figure out who all these parties are. And it's definitely a blended family nowadays, too.
Do you often see it change? Like they start off with 50-50 and they try to do that. But, sometimes things aren't working out the way the courts thought they would. And the people. I mean, do you see that custody parenting time percentage change?
Um, I think it definitely it's a good question because sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. It really kind of depends on what's going on. Generally speaking, whatever is done at the time of the divorce or the first judgment, parties generally stick with it. Now, does it tweak? Absolutely, it tweaks. It's when those parents now get significant others, that's really when the dynamic changes. But if they both kind of go about their business and their significant others have their own lives and their own children, it really kind of stays the same. And you're usually trying to go, we need to make sure we're on the same schedule. So we get all the kids in one week and none of the kids next week so we can actually have some time off. And we get to have obviously the children meet each other, and hopefully they're the same age. So that's kind of one of the little dynamics that tweak when we have this relationship. I think the other thing is, again, if you have a significant other that doesn't necessarily either like your kid or doesn't want children or isn't the mommy daddy type, that does come into play, and that really kind of hurts that dynamic where that parent generally tries to either push that child away or push that relationship away, and it's hard.
I mean, yeah, there's nothing more sad than that. I mean, and I get that if you've never had kids, in some cases you've never had kids or you just weren't raised well, where people really cared about you and treated you a certain way. Maybe you don't understand like how it should be with kids and like what it takes to actually take care of them the right way. Um, you don't know until you have kids, I don't think. You don't understand like how important it is for kids to get what they ask for now. And it's, it's really when when you're single or when you don't have kids, it's very you're me centric then. You don't have to do anything except for take care of yourself normally, or maybe you have an elderly parent or a dog, but it's it's really different when you have the kids. So that it is sad when that somebody comes in that doesn't understand.
It is. And then, the reality is, again, are you that parent that's going to go, okay, well, my child's old enough. Oh, she's 10. She knows I love her. It's okay. I'll just spend more time with my girlfriend. And sometimes that's exactly what happens. Um, but what they don't understand is that relationship is being broken down. And sometimes they don't realize it until it's too late. And sometimes they don't care. And that's so be it. That's what they want to do with their lives, right? Well, I'm not here to infringe, but I think that that's usually where the change is are you going to put your child first, or are you going to put this new person first? And more importantly, how are you going to get those two people to communicate, love each other, be respectful of each other, want to have a relationship together? And again, you can't do that, but you have to make that call of, is this new person the right person for you?
And are you willing to teach that person, the the way that you'd like things to be? And like if you don't stick up for your kid or at least like have some kind of education, get on the same page with what's right for everyone, including that person. Maybe that person doesn't want to have the kid in their clothing or like go through their stuff, or maybe everyone's got their thing, and everyone needs to feel some level of respect when it comes to that. When little kids are really little, you got to have maybe a little more um patience for them, but still being able to educate everyone in the house. Hey, this is this is what everyone feels comfortable with, and let's try to stick to this and be respectful of each other. But sometimes people just don't communicate, and then that's when everything falls apart.
And that's when you end up in court. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely that component of it. It's really, you got to try to figure out what's best for you and your family. But if not, you're going to go back into court. And so the question is, what if anything in that schedule is going to change? And that's what the court's going to look at is it how is your relationship? Is it strained? Is it flourishing? Is this other person hindering it? Like, those are again factors that we're going to look at. Same way we're going to look at is when we go to a new school and when we get a new house.
So when you're getting ready to go to court, sometimes this happens later on, right? They just give you 50-50. Sometimes you see that it's not working for whatever the reason is. And it may not even be a big emotional reason, but it might be that somebody got a new job and they're changing their shifts, or they did have to move, or whatever it is. Um, I guess talk to us about like how do you prepare for court if you are going in to talk about parenting time, and like what are the types of things that you should really pay attention to and bring to the court's attention?
Well, I'm going to go back to my favorite thing, which is document. Imagine that. But it is. I mean, it goes back to, well, I never thought I was going to end up back here. I really thought this was going to work. I don't understand where it went wrong. And sometimes, I really haven't seen a client in 10 years. And then there's other ones that I'm going, oh my God, we just closed it 2 months ago. Why are we back here? And the judge gets very frustrated with that as well. The judge is equally frustrated with that situation. So it really, I can't express it enough. When things are going well, you still document, because we don't know when things are going to go bad, and we don't know what's going to cause the bad. And it's just a matter of, from my perspective, trying to treat this as maybe, when things are going good, I just document once a week and I kind of give an overview. But you don't know until you know. And then sometimes it's too late because you're like, wow, this was just a gradual thing. It just creeped up on me. And then all of a sudden, wham, holy crap, what just happened with my kid? And a complete 180. And sometimes it's, your kid now hates you. It could very well be that. And you're not seeing it because what did I do wrong? Well, because maybe, the other parent is giving them all the fun time. They're doing all the fun activities. They're being the fun parent. And you're being the stickler and you're going, well, come on, we got to do this. We got to do this. You got to get your grades up and you got to do, your homework assignments. And we don't, you have to take responsibility. You have chores in the house, whatever it is. Or maybe it's just that they're looking at other people, their friends that get away with that stuff, right? But in any case, again, that's why I think it's funny because people always think, well, I'm taking my ex back into court because they're not doing the right thing. Sometimes it's, holy crap, my ex is taking me into court because my kid hates me. And so that's why I'm saying you need to document everything because you don't know when that shoe's going to fall and you're going to be in that situation. Document things. Obviously, it's sometimes is just that thing that it creeps up on you. So, at least if you have some kind of log, if you have somebody that you're sharing things with, send out text messages, make sure you keep those. Text messages get deleted by your providers. Don't tell me it doesn't, because 99% of the world is text happy, right? So they're going to get deleted. Emails, they're going to get deleted depending on whether or not you have a provider that you're paying for or not. So again, those things are going to get deleted, documented. Document simple things like they're showing up for late for pickup and drop offs. They're not there. They're refusing to do this. And again, sometimes it's you have to defend yourself.
I mean, too, I think there's a phenomenon that I didn't realize what happened, but I remember listening to some parenting programs a couple years ago, and they all said that, hey, once your child turns 10 or 11 or 12, it is a whole different game all of a sudden. And they all of a sudden maybe they're not as cuddly with you anymore. Maybe there comes a time where a kid starts to voice their opinion, and they've spent most of their life being children who can't do anything for themselves. They need to ask for everything. Some of the kids, maybe just don't say how they feel so that they can be more pleasant and get what they need. It's They get old enough, and then all of a sudden, and I've seen this happen with a few people that I know as well, where the kids are growing and growing and growing, and all of a sudden they are well over 100 pounds. Maybe they're as heavy as you, like some of the boys, right? And they're taller than you, and you're telling them what to do, and all of a sudden they realize that they're bigger than you. Or they're not as easy to move. And now their opinions can be heard a little easier because of that. I don't know. I mean, I feel like some of the problems may start at a certain age.
Yeah, I think, it really boils down to how much exposure your children have to the environment. Whether it be, hey, look, we're, spending all the time over at Sally's house, and Sally's parents are divorced, and they know that they can get away with a lot of things, and they go on play on the computer, and as soon as they come back and they're playing on the computer and they're getting into things, and oh, by the way, that parent doesn't believe in parental controls. And so now I'm seeing a lot of things I shouldn't be seeing, right? And I'm loving it because this is the greatest thing. But it's also entitling them, or they think that they're entitled to this type of behavior. I can do this. I saw this. This is the way it happens. You can't call the police on me. It's that type of mentality. All of a sudden, you're like, whoa, I'm still your parent, right? But again, it's what their environment is going to adhere to. Are they going over there, or is somebody actually, like, I want to say the latchkey kids, and everyone's hearing this is going, what is that? But the reality is, there's kids that are coming home and there's no parent there, and they have free reign for all the electronics, for all of the computers, for all of the TVs, and they're watching whatever they want when they're alone. They're getting this information from other people that they know. So there is that dynamic of what age. Now, what age is usually, like, again, around that age of 10 is now I'm letting the kids watch more TV. I'm giving them a cell phone. They have their own computer, and it's not a computer just for school. It's a computer for them. In addition to, the iPads that you can throw around. No, these are real adult programs now on their iPads. And so that's where that dynamic comes in. And then wait, because then they hit 14. Somewhere around 13 or 14, that's when they go, okay, great. I also know about sexuality, and I know about drugs and alcohol. So now we've got that component that's now coming into play. And again, that's where, again, your child is going to kind of do this complete I hate you mentality. They will hate you. Unless, of course, you're doing all these things that allow them to do it, which doesn't make you necessarily a good parent. But that's the reality, is you're now the enemy because I get to do all these things and I'm entitled to this. The real problem becomes when you have people that are now learning about their sexuality and aren't really saying, oh, I'm not straight. I know I'm not straight. I don't know what I am, but I'm not straight. And that really kind of creates a dynamic that also couples with the alcohol and the drugs. And that's really where it gets out of control, in my opinion, the most. I mean, obviously, there's other things that are factors, but I think that usually is the biggest thing for teens that kind of set them off to, I want to say, a sordid past, but a past that is conflicting within themselves. And so they don't know how to address it. So the only way they address is by lashing out at the people that love them the most. And it's a difficult time for everyone involved.
I mean, it's interesting you say that because it is a totally different world out there from when we were kids. Because in my high school, there were no kids that admitted to any other sexuality. It just weren't. I was in Maine. I'm 50 years old, and and back then that just wasn't. And then you'd find out later that, well, in fact, there were some of my classmates have, that come out there on Facebook, and that's great. And nowadays it goes another step further, and there's like 30 different varieties of sexualities out there. And you've got parents who maybe didn't grow up in that age where they had, like all the different sexualities, that there's all the flavors of the rainbow in there. And it's hard for some people to figure it out, how to parent through that, because there's also depression, and people are trying to still feel accepted. And maybe teachers, or maybe they don't feel they're getting accepted by their parents. There's a lot of runaway situations. um there are even programs out there for kids that just get kicked out because I feel like this is a whole nother uh interview topic, because it's so deep and it's so vast, but it is definitely worth mentioning as one of the issues that happen as kids get older, because nowadays they're all talking about it at such a young age. I mean, I was just at my daughter's riding camp this summer. She stayed at the stay away camp for the first time, and her cat in her cabin, she said there was only like 2 straight kids out of like 12. And I'm like, what? Like, that's wow, okay. And I don't know, like everyone knows, really. I mean, some of them may really know, but some people may just try to be in with the cool kids, which I think is somebody with a different sexuality now. So you never know. This stuff does change. I mean, people do. Some kids have changed their mind. I know that she's told me, like, oh, this kid isn't X anymore. Now it's Y. And now they just decided they don't know. They don't want to say yet. This is probably smart. Since you're not even dating yet. I don't know.
It absolutely is. And I think, like I said, that's where it comes into play is, I think as a society, we need to evolve. We need to accept. But I think, again, it's now where you would never in a million years see a gay couple on TV. And now it's like every other show has it, right? So again, that's where I think, the more the TV and media accepts it, the more open the society accepts it. The problem is, it doesn't mean that the children necessarily know what they are. They just know again, it might just be the cool thing, but it might be something that they're interested in. And again, the biggest problem is telling somebody, because what if I'm not accepted? And sometimes, it is, I'll accept you if you're gay or lesbian, but not all the other things, because I don't, what are all those things? Don't tell me they, them. I don't know what that means. And so you'll get people that are just that ignorant, and they don't know and they don't care. And again, we're getting more and more shows. So I think the good thing is, the more and more that it's out there in the media, the better it is for society as a whole. But it's also very hard for the courts to address that stuff, because they have to determine, well, just because this is happening, does that mean one parent's better than the other? And so they have to look at the big picture, because, maybe it is somebody isn't accepting, but maybe it's that both parties are accepting, but they have different parenting styles.
It's true. And I really think that the best thing to do in some of those situations with your child is to just like, not say you're too young to know what you are, because that just really, that's a trigger. And they're probably gonna really be angry. But just it's just like when you swear in front of a child by mistake and you don't want them to repeat it, you don't say it again. You just don't act like it's a big deal. You just keep going. Or if they fall and they scrape their leg and you don't want them to freak out, you're just like, oh yeah, let's go play over here. Or you can be like, oh my God. I mean, just, you don't have to have a big reaction over this thing. Just just let them say whatever they're going to say, and if that's what it is, then you accept it. It's your child.
And
um
I think that's sage advice, because the reality is that's exactly what was going to happen in court. Because the moment you do react, that's when somebody's going to come in and go, look, you're not accepting of this person, whoever it is, you're not accepting of this, this issue that's addressed. And so now you are in litigation, where again, if you just said, hey, mom, dad, we need to talk to one another, like something's going on with Sally and we really want to sit down, and maybe we as parents need to get our act together so that we can put up a united front for Sally, so that she's not having these issues and she's not freaking out about it. So that's going to be my recommendation as an adult and as a parent, to have that conversation between the parents and even the step parents.
that's a great idea, and I'm sure that at some point we should look at doing an interview just on that topic, because there are so many colors of what happens. Like there's so many possibilities. It's really interesting. I have a woman that I went to high school with, and online, like I can see that she had a boy and a girl, and both of the children are now transgendered, going into the other sex. It's just, I mean, well, good for them, and well, that's interesting, because I've to have two. And it just goes to show like how often these things are happening now, and people are looking at the possibilities that are out there, and that may not be for you, but it's for a lot of people. So it's something that we all have to kind of, get used to. If you're opposed to it, you're going to have to get used to it, because it's certainly not going away.
Absolutely, it's not. And again, it's big picture is, at some point we're all going to be accepting of it, even if we're not today, just because society's going to, I guess, force our hand into it.
Well, the world is not boring, that is for sure. And it's making your job more interesting. It's not just going to be always the classic, the olden days divorce. Like there's just new things being added all the time, and new aspects of it, and that must really keep you on your toes.
It does, and I think, it it does make it a little bit hard when you're going into court and they use different pronouns than you're used to saying, because you're used to saying, wife, mom, dad, and sometimes you can't say that. And it's them and they and we, and it even feels weird. And when you're saying it, you're like, am I using that right? But again, I think it's just a matter of that dynamic. The more people are talking about whatever it is, the more accepting of it as a society we will be.
Oh, absolutely. So it's, I know we kind of went on a big tangent there, and it is an issue that like we have to work on, but I want to circle back and is there anything else that we've missed that you wanted to discuss on um, how to prepare for a parenting time type of a trial?
I think that again, the big things are going to be, making sure you have yourself in check, which is kind of what we covered here. The reality is we can talk about it and you can document and you can have all the evidence that supports it. But if your mindset isn't in the right place, then you're not going to be in the right place. You're not going to be able to present that to a judge. The judge is going to be able to see, well, ma'am, why would you say that when we're talking about this? And just those family dynamics that they're going to be able to look at and go, something doesn't smell right. So, it's a practice what you preach mentality. Just because you say it doesn't make it so. And again, that's why we're talking about if you can talk to your ex, if you can have that communication before you go into court, great. If you can keep yourself in check when you're talking to your child or talking about your ex anywhere in the vicinity of your child, those are great things, because just one of them escapes and somebody knows, and now all hell's broken loose. So really, it's a matter of making yourself a better person, if you will, so that you can be a better person for your child. And goes along with that is again, looking at the big picture, looking at all the documentation, looking at how you act, how you present yourself in court. Those are all key things.
And I think too, at some point, you have to start accepting that your child has an opinion, and a lot of these problems can be avoided if child just feels like they are listened to, and that yeah, it's the child doesn't run the show, but you're able to listen to them open-mindedly, and maybe it wasn't what you thought originally and you wanted to do something a certain way, but maybe you can compromise and come up with something that maybe you're both equally still unhappy with. That's how the courts like it, right? But but may work for everyone and get the results that you're looking for, because I mean there's a ton of parenting shows out there like that, but it feels like the one common denominator between all that is really communication and not treating the kid like they're still 5 years old, and that they just need to be seen and not heard. And like some people still have that mentality. And yeah, it really, I think internally, the kids just will eventually combust and break. And it's a big problem.
And I agree. And I think the only thing that you really want to caution yourself with is great, we can be accepting of things such as sexuality. What we can't be accepting of is children that are abusive, children that are showing signs of, suicidal ideations, or drugs, or the fact that they want to go out and go to a gun range. Like those are things that are also very predominant right now, and we really have to focus on. There's the good stuff, or the things that we don't necessarily care about because they're not impacting us, and then there's the bad stuff. And we do want parents to speak out when the bad things are happening. We do want people to go to the courts when bad things are happening, because all too often, all we hear about is, hey, another class shooting. And you don't want to be that statistic. So if there are things that are happening that are bad, whether it be, hey, look, I've told my ex and they're still not doing something, you still have that forum to take it into court and go, wait a minute, this is a bad thing. We keep letting this child go over to, Sally's house, and Sally is a known drug addict. Okay, great. But we need to fix those problems. So we have to deal with the good and the bad on both sides.
I think you're right. And I think too, if we can bring it to the children's attention when they do things that an adult would be put in jail for. I mean, seriously, like sexual harassment is a real thing. And when the kids are talking about this stuff and discovering things as they get older, they just feel like they can talk about it with anyone and everyone, and not everyone wants to hear that. And they get it, not every child is ready to hear that, not every parent. And it's such a crazy time, that middle preteen time when, somebody has older brothers and sisters, so they learn a lot more, or they go visit someone, like you said, that, maybe doesn't have any parental controls and they're on the internet learning things. Um, you can't just go around saying stuff to people about their sexuality, about their bodies, about and kids just are doing that. And like I bring it up. I'm like, you can go to jail. And it's the same thing with like pushing somebody or whatever. That's assault. You could go to jail for that when you're an adult. So let's not start now.
Absolutely. I mean, we really, like I said, we need to look at big picture and we need to look at long term.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on today. It's such a passionate topic that we're talking about. I know we went on a couple of interesting tangents there, but all does have to do with parenting time and how things change. So I'm glad that we were able to cover those. And thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you next time.